Okay, streaming. Okay, let's see how this is coming out now. All right. Well, let's see. Do we have anybody in the stream at this moment in time? Viewers, stream settings, analytics, current viewers. Okay, we got 3 views on this. All right, anybody here? Is anybody listening, watching at all? I'm just so okay. Bellino's bounty coming through. Appreciate you being here, Mike. Thank you very much. I apologize, guys, for the issues here. All right. Good. Okay. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Yeah. So, full disclosure, here in the woods of New Hampshire, the internet is. Oh, hey, Chris. Thanks for sticking around. You guys, you're warming my heart. I am deeply appreciative of you guys sticking around. So it looks like we are good to go now. So I'm gonna brush some of this off. The 4K streaming does not seem to be, hey, girly girl tuning in from Wyoming. I believe you were a New Hampshire native, if I recall from your email. And I love Wyoming. So happy to have you here as well. Yeah, we're streaming in HD. I flew too close to the sun on my digital wings and was trying to stream in 4K, which is what I have been doing previously. But the last stream, if you guys remember last week, we were goofing around and trying to implement a call-in system, which I am happy to tell you, I do believe we have gotten working, and I did put the link for the call-in in the stream. So at some point, if somebody wants to play with that, you guys are welcome to call in and we can give that a go. It works as it's supposed to, kind of like a FaceTime call from the caller's end, and it's just your video and audio are displayed here on my on the stream here for everybody else. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me for that testing process that we went through last week, and hopefully this week we'll get stuff off the ground a little bit. Anyhow, at long last, it's a solid half hour overdue, but we are live here from Roan Ridge Farm in western New Hampshire, where we are raising heritage hogs on pasture the old-fashioned way. I've got a couple of new things that I've been doing, and one of them has been daily shorts. And I know some of you have been tuning in, leaving comments. I really appreciate it. And we have also gathered a lot of new subscribers from this project that I'm doing. And it's a 60-day project in total. I'm on day 4 today. So my goal is to try to do 60 days consecutively where I'm posting little shorts that are just unpacking different elements of what we're doing on the farm. And I think that number one, to try to get a little traction and help promote what we're doing on the channel to folks who may not necessarily be deep enough into the weeds to be looking for streams and content about raising pigs, but just to kind of bring folks in. And then also, one of the things that I was thinking is like, I need to tighten up some of my storytelling and being more engaging, being a little more precise with some of what I'm doing. And the shorts, it's a very low risk, low time allotment method to take maybe all told somewhere around 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes of the day to put something out there that can bring in new people and that will also sharpen the blade on my end so that when I go to do a longer form video, I have a little bit more perspective, a little bit more, hopefully, improvement in the storytelling and the creative side. Because a lot of times when I'm doing the long form videos and the streams, as you probably can tell, I am speaking a little bit more just kind of brain dump, stream of consciousness type of stuff, and that doesn't always put meat in the seats from an algorithmic perspective. So welcome to anybody who's joining us from the shorts, and we're going to keep doing that. Happy to have both the regulars and the new folks here, and enjoying watching the channel grow. One of the things that came from the first 4 days of the shorts that I've been putting out have been the question of like piglet mortality, which got me thinking about, again, the age-old question of, are factory farms bad? And the demonization of the meat industry. And to be clear, I'm a big proponent of being realistic and pragmatic, and not just using buzzwords and throwing entire industries and methods of producing food and many other things, just throwing that stuff under the bus. And in this past week, I have really had a chance to take a closer, more personal look at the way that it works trying to have babies and manage animals on pasture versus doing that same type of thing in a barn. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit with you guys tonight, is to compare some of the pros and cons, because there's definitely a movement of pastured pork and sort of a, dare I say, snobbery that goes along with the, well, at least we're not like the factory farming. And I forced myself to use the term factory farming in the title just because I know that that would convey the idea in the same way that like organic conveys an idea of higher quality inputs and more care being taken. But when you really get into the nuts and bolts of both, there's things that I think are useful to steal in terms of methodology from the factory farming and the larger pork producers, which I don't know whether the term factory farm is really appropriate or whether that really means anything. But I think there's things that as a small farmer, I can do better in order to kind of steal some of the things that they do well. And on the flip side, I think there are some things that we do well with our smaller farms. And the reality that I keep coming to is the fact that the whole idea of pastured pork, it's not something that I do because I'm better or more ethical or more caring. There's definitely an extent to which if I could throw concrete over the majority of my 10 acres and have a nice flat concrete slab, put a barn on it, and I had the, slat floor where the manure goes through, and I could keep everything clean and tidy, in and out with backhoes, with buckets, and doing chores for quadruple the amount of animals was that much more streamlined, I would be hard pressed to turn that down. But the reality is that that kind of infrastructure costs a lot to buy, and it requires a decent amount of hands to maintain and to use. And so I went into raising pigs on pasture because of the fact that that's just what fit for the type of property that I had and the budget that I have and where I'm starting off. And there were like commercial pork farming was something that was done largely on pasture, not year round necessarily, but in the Midwest, if you look at, and I don't have the book right in front of me here, but was it Swine Production is the name of the book? It's a very generic title, but it's kind of the Bible of pork production. It was written, I think the first copy of it was written back in the 1940s. And you can see over the years the different methods that have evolved. And in the 50s and 60s, they were raising pork like large herds that had access to pasture. So the idea wasn't, the two ideas weren't completely divorced, where it was like either you have animals crammed into, these nose to tail, everybody jammed in and in what looks inhumane in these tiny little spaces. The image that I used on the thumbnail, by the way, I think I got that from some Polish publication. I figured they wouldn't mind if I poached that image for half of my thumbnail just to convey a point. And then of course, I had ChatGPT touch it up a little bit so it would be appropriately mine, so that would have a little my own creative zip on there. But I can tell you that a lot of what people think about, because I'm looking at this for a second from sort of the uninformed person who's not raising pigs themselves. And when you see an image of pigs in a farrowing crate and you see how tight it is constrained, and of course there's some interpretive editing that's done on the photo to make the contrast very high, drop down the shadows, drop down the highlights, and put a big vignette on the face and the sad face of the mom, and this is what your bacon costs you, um, scallywag, and that's kind of the attitude that is approached with the activists that use this as a point of contention. And unfortunately, legislation is being proposed and ratified on the basis of these emotional arguments that don't actually pass muster in the real world. And when you tell one of these people who have these outlandish complaints that are rooted in emotion, not from actually having spent time working with animals and managing a herd of their own, when you tell them, hey, is it better to raise animals in a barn where they're confined and in a farrowing crate where they can't move around and they have very little space, or is it better to put them on pasture? Oh, well, obviously, the pasture is way better. You see the sunshine, the green grass, everything looks beautiful. And it does. I'm not taking anything away there, but I want to present the flip side of that, where the reason why I have my animals on pasture is not because it's more ethical or healthier or better. It's because I can't afford $1 million pig barn that I could keep 40,000 sows in and manage them, with a couple of teenagers and pay them $15 an hour to go slop the stalls and put feed in the hoppers and, go big. So I use what I have, and in the process, I'm trying to make the best out of it. And there certainly are advantages to operating on pasture, but I think those advantages are a little easier for the layperson to see. Whereas when you see the PETA pictures of the pigs in the farrowing crates, it's really difficult for people to understand that when you're on a farm where the sows are in farrowing crates, farmer doesn't have to go out and see his new litter and bring a 5-gallon bucket and carry out 5 piglets that got pancaked overnight and have to go inside and try to do the math to figure out, okay, am I going to be able to afford to buy feed next month because I thought I was going to have 8 piglets, now I only have 3. How many other litters am I going to have to get to farrow at this point? And then are those piglets even going to survive? Because the farrowing crate, of course, is a physical restriction that's used for a couple of days on the sow to limit her movements so that she doesn't get nervous, start moving around. As again, if you think about those of you who have, and this may be limiting my audience a little when I say this, but those of you who have been party to a childbirth, one of the things that happens, right, when my wife was in labor, it was like, oh, I don't feel good, walking around, trying to get comfortable, can't get comfortable, get up, stand, sit down, roll over, turn on this way, turn on that way, rub my back, get me a drink, take some medicine, etc. There's all these different things that we see in the process of childbirth as humans. But when we kind of overlay that same imagery onto an animal, they're not just having one baby at a time, they're having 10 babies, 12 babies, 16 babies, 20 babies in some cases if you're running landrace or Yorkshires that have these like gargantuan litters. I don't, but just saying. And so mama's still having all of those discomforts, those pains, all of that stuff. And so she's got to move around, and sometimes she gets spooked. It's the middle of the night. There's other pigs nearby. She's trying to rearrange, get comfortable. Maybe she's trying to make room for one of the babies to get on the tit. And then what happens is I come out there the next morning. Oh, beautiful. There's a new litter. And then I walk away with a bucket full of expired piglets. And I now have to, calculate that. So I don't say that to feel sorry for myself. I'm just trying to paint the glass either half empty or half full, depending on which way you're looking at this. But the farrowing crates serve a very useful purpose that ultimately is meant to protect life and reduce suffering. And it is a pain in the butt for mom for like the first few days when she's in there. But once the babies are 3-4 days old, they can move around. There's no need for the farrowing crate because the mom can go into a bigger pen. The babies are mobile enough where they're not going to get mashed, and everybody goes back to their normal life. But PETA only stops by for that quick photo shoot when they're actually in the farrowing cage without actually doing any due diligence to research and give people information. And there's times like when I'm doing these shorts and I'm going out and showing people the piglets, and it's my first, for what that's worth, it's my first purebred litter of Berkshires. Berkshires are very desirable these days. I think some of it is a little bit trendy. And Chris, I am gonna get back to your question about testing my pork against grocery store pork. And for what it's worth, guys, if anybody does want to call in, you are welcome to do that. You can call in on the, you can call in, you click the link in the description for this video. There is a VDO link in there. If you click that and click share screen, not share screen, sorry, share camera. And then once I see you kind of popping in, then I can bring you in and we go from there. But in the process of, showing off my brand new purebred Berkshires, I was very excited and proud of, the new babies, and they're beautiful. But at the same time, it's like very bittersweet because I think about like, man, I wish I had a little bit more concrete. And the thing is, I can't use farrowing stalls, farrowing crates, farrowing cages, whatever you want to call them. I can't use those even if I wanted to. Number one, they're not cheap. Number two, they're hard to find in this area. Although if you go to the Midwest, you can find, old operations that have shut down where you can buy them relatively inexpensive, but it's a trip to get out there and get them back. And the flip side of that is you have to have concrete in which to anchor them, and then you obviously have to have the setup to be able to maneuver the animals into the stall that you want them at the time. And there's a decent amount of management that just doesn't work for me. So even if I had a concrete barn with all the, the nice flat symmetry that literally does not exist anywhere in the Northeast, or at least not in New Hampshire, let me put it that way, still couldn't do it. So I'm stuck on pasture, for better or worse. So I am stuck with the more highbrow ethical method of raising my animals. Now, to look at it on the flip side, because I know that I'm pushing back a little bit on the idea that the big factory farms are inherently evil, because I feel like that's a common prejudice, especially in this homesteading farm space. When you read the marketing that most of us put on our meat, I include myself in this because, again, buzzwords are how we communicate things in shorthand to people that maybe don't really know the nuts and bolts. But when we communicate the evils of factory farming to people, I think that there's misunderstanding there about the reality of the situation. And the pros and the plus side of the pasture-based system is that instead of trusting your infrastructure to contain mamas and help them to behave well, you have to rely on the genetic selection and the experience and the character of your animals, and you're relying on that to get bigger litters and better survivability. And the downside, of course, is that along the way, that means that you're going to be having to look at some, dead piglets to be able to say, like, for example, with this situation, I have to look at what I could have done better here because this is a first time mama. So she's a gilt. She was a gilt. Now she's a sow. I'm just a gilt, not yet a sow. This is a song by Britney Spears, if memory serves. And, oh, guys, by the way, if you haven't already, like the stream. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that as well. It helps us build our audience and get this, stay in touch with the algorithm and the public. But since it's her first time going, I think I probably could have set her up for success a little bit better by separating her out. And usually I try to separate them out, but with her, she's one of like 10 gilts that I had that are pregnant, and I was checking her at one point, but then her milk didn't let down. She was getting bigger, but it's just like with gilts, it can be really hard to tell. With some of my sows, I can look at them and say, okay, she's X amount of days away. And then other times with the first timers, it's a little bit squirrely. So basically, she wound up having her babies when she was in with everybody else. And that also can contribute to the dysregulation of the environment, and then also somebody rolling over, getting spooked, getting stepped on, that kind of thing, especially when the babies first come out. So the pros and cons of being on pasture and doing everything on pasture, um, it works really well on some level for people that don't have time to be holding hands with all of their animals, because the animals kind of have to do it for themselves. I tell them I can give you food once a day, I can give you water periodically as needed, and I'll try to, throw in some forage, some cover crops, but I'm not going to be out there holding your hand. There's sometimes when I wind up going the extra mile despite my better judgment and my desire to sleep and have sanity and a social life with my family like a normal person. But for the most part, I try to give the animals free rein to do their own thing and let them have the benefit of being on pasture. And the trade-off is you're not shoveling crap as much, if you're not really shoveling crap at all on pasture, because ultimately you rotate the pigs off of the fouled part of the pasture, to put it politely. You move them off that part, you plant stuff there. Everything that they dropped fertilizes the forage that they're going to come back in a few weeks once stuff is broken down, and everything kind of works in a cyclical nature. Now, again, sounds really nice. The downside is if there's a hang up and you're kind of stuck, oh, you know what? This crop that I planted over here, it didn't take the first time, or we didn't get enough rain and everything is still sitting. I'm not ready to move them on to this next pasture yet. So they're going to stay on the first paddock, and then they're going to beat that paddock into oblivion and moonscape it a little bit before you're able to get them off and move them on to the next pasture. But you're not having to clean stuff up. You're not really having to do hardly anything for them. And once you go through, and it takes a little time to vet your sows in this type of a situation, because again, we're not using a farrowing crate, because a farrowing crate allows you to get away with suboptimal genetics from a maternal standpoint. One of the things that I pay a lot of attention to when I am working with my breeding herd and my sows, even though the maternal qualities are predominantly inherited from the sire or the boar. But one of the things that I am really paying attention to is the maternal qualities, and how does she do? Like, what percentage of her litter comes out right? How reliable is she? Does she have her babies without any issue? Does she need somebody out there holding her hand? Is she docile? So when you come in to check on her, or maybe to help her a little bit, does she get all worked up and start jumping around, romping and stomping and pancaking babies while you're just trying to help move them out of the way and not get her too upset? Different sows have different temperaments and different abilities to perform. And it takes a couple of tries sometimes to find that out. And the one purebred Berkshire sow that I have currently in the barn, she's got the red and black spotted litter that's in there. If you watch tonight's short, you'll see that, because her babies are getting ready to wean. I call her baby Aggie. Agatha is her full name. Baby Aggie. She is phenomenal. And if I could have like 40 sows, hell, if I could have like 15 sows like her, I could get rid of everybody else in my herd and I would be making money, because she just has her babies. She's assertive, but not too aggressive. She's great mom, milks good. She doesn't drop down and get all emaciated. Like, she's able to handle the piglets, and she's just, I mean, from first time, I think this time she lost one, but that was one that I think kind of, I don't know whether it was her that actually squashed the baby. I think it was actually, it was a pretty big litter. I think she had like 12 or 13, and the other babies kind of piled on top of the runt. And so he went the way of the, you know, the buffalo, which is always, you know, it's sad. It's nice to have every single piglet, but to lose one out of a litter that big and everybody else make it through with no issues, that's pretty darn nice. That's pretty good. And if I could select, and that's kind of the bar that I'm aiming for, I want to call out the sows that I can reliably say are incapable of producing 10 piglets per litter pretty consistently, as long as I give them the basic tools that they need to be successful. Then that's kind of what I'm doing. And then once, as I have those animals, then everything else kind of goes from there. And right now I have a couple of those, but I've also fallen behind a little bit because last year I got distracted by producing pork because I needed the money. And there's money in the meat in the short term, but like the whole breeding thing, and this is part of the reason for anybody who has ever, you know, cursed the forebears of the person who they're buying piglets from, and they're saying to themselves, how is it so expensive? What are you feeding these pigs? Like, are you feeding them, you know, are you inviting them into the house and feeding them like organic vegetables and fruits and making them a mango smoothie to sip on before bed? Like, the price that people are charging for piglets, but the reality is, like, breeding and getting all of the qualities at a scale of production that is repeatable, it takes years, and repeated, it takes repeated, oh, let me see there. I'll get you in here for a second. Um, it takes years of trying and effort to get everything. And let me just take a quick look in here. Let's see. All right, I'm just trying to get a call in happening here. Let's see what's going on. Okay. Yeah. Well, when I see you in, then I will put you into the stream. Right now, I'm not seeing anything coming through just yet. But anywho, the process of getting good animals that can produce the qualities that you want at the scale and the rate that you want, the survivability, animals that can basically be trusted to get the job done, that is not a small feat. That's more than just, ooh, I got some really exciting, semen from, was it Shipley's? Yeah, I got some really exciting, straws from Shipley's, and I'm gonna make some awesome babies. And yeah, on a short term, like in terms of growing them out and putting them on putting them in the freezer, you can do some really cool stuff with that. But in terms of actually creating a breeding herd that is gonna get the job done, that is something that really takes time and commitment, as I'm learning. Sometimes I kind of wish that I was not. And so that can be a little bit squirrely. All right, let's see here. Now, let me try to get you in. And let's see. All right, let's see if we can pop a live call in here. All right. Okie doke. Go ahead. Let me see. I'm trying to see if I can see or hear anything from you. Right now, I am not getting anything in, girly girl. But yeah, I don't know whether it might be the connection on your end, but typically I should see something come up on this end when you're coming through, and when I start to hear something and you start coming in, then I can bring you into the stream. So I'm gonna just go back a little bit here in the chat for a second. Chris asks, have I ever had my pork tested compared to store-bought for nutrient content? That is a great question. No, I have not. I have thought about doing that, but I have not yet. At this point, like, I am trying to focus on, well, I mean, I know it's a poor excuse, but the reality is, like, after having a tough spring with farrowing, I'm still trying to fill all of my spring orders for the piglets. And so that's been my main focus right now. And money wise, I don't have enough to be able to spare any to go and do any kind of testing. But yeah, I would absolutely love to do that. That I think would make a lot of difference, because I do think that there is a tremendous benefit to the pigs being outside. I don't know whether and I think I agree with what you're saying, that there's a middle ground to protect life and your business investment while still giving your animals the life that you want. And I think you're saying the life that you want them to have, like a life that feels good and appropriate, right? I totally agree with that. And I think that the way that production pork typically was done back in the 50s and 60s, as I've looked at a lot of those old books, the animals did have access to being outside, and they would plant large fields with forage crops and cover crops and things that, now we look at. That's where I got the idea to start planting canola, which I don't have any this year. I've kind of gone in all in with buckwheat because the canola was a little pricey, and I just couldn't make the couldn't drop the money on it after buying feed. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to go short on some of the cover crops that I want to plant for them. But it has, a lot of lysine in it as well. Buckwheat is a really good one. I think dollars for donuts, you got to have the soil a little bit warm, but buckwheat is a real good one. I know I say that every single live stream, and I have no shame in my game in making that acknowledgement. But the always a big fan, because dollars for donuts, buckwheat, it wants to grow. It's pretty easy. You just throw it out there and it sprouts really quickly too, which is another really nice thing, aside from the obvious nutrient content too. That's a big factor. So yep, I'm the funny thing is, I think with just about every farm, I think a lot of what's, as small business people, what we have to do and what we do and wind up doing is we kind of take the circumstances that necessitate the way that we raise our animals, and we adapt to that, and we try to incorporate that into our branding, so that, like, if I had all the money in the world, I would probably have a lot more barn and a lot less pasture. I would still have some access to pasture, but it would be more like what they did back in the 50s and 60s, where everything was based around a, housing system, and then access to go outside and then come back in. That would be the way that I would want to do that. Oh, looks like we have a caller in here. And Taurus Chorus, who is my dear friend Josh from Half Scroll. No, I have never tried to milk any of my sows, although I have debated that. All right, now let's see. You're live on the show. How are we doing? I am not hearing you at the moment, but Oh, there we go. I hear goats.
Well, just hang on.
Okay, I'm hanging. While we're hanging, I'm just gonna see if we can get a little audio feedback from the chat. How does everything sound on your end? Yes, shout out Josh. one of my I have a couple of older friends, and I mean that not old in a pejorative sense. I mean old in a I'm old, and so we've been friends for a long time. So these are people who know me. Cool. All right. So audio, we're 5:9. Her audio is louder than mine. I can't have that. Okay, let's see. Turn that down a little bit. All right. Well, we'll play with that a little bit. I can tweak and adjust that, but I appreciate you guys helping get get things dialed in on this end. Yeah, the call-ins. It took us a little bit to get that figured out, and we figured, it'd be nice to have the option to be able to do, or to be able to incorporate a little bit more of a call it a community type of thing in here, so that we could make the hangout a little more of a hangout thing.
In the kennel because he got hurt.
All right. So who are you? Because you are not an old friend of mine from back when I was in high school. So I only know you as, I could go back into the email and look, but what's your name and tell everybody what you're up to. Uh-oh. Maybe we got some bad service in the barn. I understand that. My barn is like, I step inside the barn and like my service just drops off. So what are we looking at here? I have to figure out where to look. There's like 10 different things to look at. It's a little squirrely, but I do hear, I'm not sure whether those are goats or sheep. Huh. Cool. Well, if nothing else, I am very excited about the fact that we have at least streamlined the process a little bit here. So that's a good thing. I'm looking forward to doing more of these once we get things a little bit more tuned in. We can make the call-in part of things a little bit more go a little bit smoother, hopefully, and then we get some regulars and stuff like that. So I don't quite know how it works, the live call-in. Well, it's kind of like a FaceTime call. So, I mean, you can talk to us and we can hear you, because I can hear is it goats or sheep? And I can see what your camera is showing, which is right now a bucket on the floor. And I can hear what's going on. I can hear you. I heard you talking to the cat earlier. So it's, yeah, basically same concept.
Mm-hmm. You're so cute.
Okay, what we got here? Who are we feeding? Oh, I want to see what comes next. Now, my guess is that for the first time this evening, this is not on my end. I think that this may be a signal issue on Girly Girl's end. And are you able to hear me on the call in? I know the chat seems to be able to hear me. The two of you that are left in there. Yeah, it's it's like an eternal tunnel, a mirror. Um, Anywho, I think what I'm going to do, I am going to. It looks like she is gone, so I am going to close that out, and we can go from there. All right. Well, anywho, um, yeah, that was a good thing. If anybody else wants to call in, you are more than welcome. I'd be happy to facilitate any of you other gunslingers out there that want to give a holler and tell us what you're doing on this Friday night. Otherwise, I'm open to take questions, or I don't know, whatever you guys want to talk about. Josh seemed to have some interest in a swine lactation production scenario, which I have thought about that. I think the problem is that pigs are not very good at still standing and just like hanging out, whereas cows can be a little more docile, and they also have about a third or a fourth of the udders that pigs do. So cows are a more obvious one, but I have never tasted pig's milk myself, so I could not tell you. But it is an interesting question, and um, it does kind of make me wonder. Oh yeah, pigs produce milk, and especially like a good mom, like you'll see her like, oh, it's a huge thing. I mean, like figuratively speaking, not that their physical size is huge. I mean, like it's a significant thing because like a good mom can produce a lot of milk, and you can see that reflected in the size of the babies. Like when the babies are, um, you know, when the babies are growing, when they're getting the nutrients that they need because mom is producing plenty of milk, like that's a good mom. And that's one of the most important things to me that I'm looking for as a breeder. I want to have moms that are producing a lot of milk and that are able to maintain their condition, their body weight. They're not like expending all of their energy and their fat reserves to nourish the babies, and then they have nothing left, and then it takes them a month to get back into shape before they're able to get pregnant again. Ideally, 2-3 weeks they should be up and at 'em and ready to go again if they maintain their conditioning pretty well. um, hmm. Yeah, uh that one mom I described, yeah, she is a rock star. She's a good one. She's a good one. It's she kind of spoiled me because she made it really easy, and now it's like I kind of don't want to, not that I don't want to bother, but I'm just like I compare everybody else to her, and she just made everything like, oh, okay, you got a bunch of babies, nice job, see you tomorrow, and bring some more food, and she just gets everything done, and it's easy to kind of get comfortable with that. um Girly girl 82. So what I could see on my end, I don't know if you were hearing me. I could hear you and I could see what your camera was showing me. But normally, the way that you use the call in feature, um, you flip the camera around and it's basically like FaceTime, except your screen and the video call is patched into the live stream. So I don't know if you were able to hear me through the phone, or as you had the video going on there. I don't know if you were able to hear me or not, but that's kind of the one. That's, if you want to call it, a sticky wicket. As long as we can both hear each other, then it pretty much just acts like a FaceTime. It's just the icons for the different features within that video call. It's a little bit different. It's a little clunky because they're done through the website. But we were able to hear you. I heard you talking to the cat, and it looked like there were some birds and whatnot in there. Could see the video stream pretty well. So I think it was kind of working, but we just have to actually get to where we can talk to each other on there. That's the trick. Taurus Chorus says, have you noticed traits passed down to the litter and further generations? I mean, I guess that's what happens with all of us critters. Yeah, definitely there are certain traits that are inherited to the babies. The maternal characteristics and qualities tend to be passed through the sire as opposed to the mama. I still am going to keep, like, if I get a good mama, I'm still going to keep her her babies. But in that case, what I might do is I would breed one of her sons to her, and that way the boar, because it's passed down the genetic traits. So follow me here for a second, and I know this sounds vile and unethical, but with animals it actually works this way. What you would do, you have a really good mama, you have a purebred son, and you breed that boar that she has back to her, and then that litter should contain the good maternal traits and good maternal qualities because those are passed genetically through the male, right? And so that's called line breeding, and that's a very, I don't want to call it a pro level move, but that's kind of a lot of people are concerned or scared about breeding, son to mom or grandfather to granddaughter type of thing. But what we call it a closed herd, where you're not bringing in outside just for biosecurity, because like disease is a big thing. It's on like the big hog farms, you have to wear like, one of those hazmat suits, and you have to step in, like they have antibacterial baths that you have to step in to clean your shoes off before you go in. I mean, the whole thing is very, very, very secure. And they do that because if you introduce because the immune system of a lot of animals, when they're kept in a large area and they are kind of helped out with antibiotics rather than by toughening up and strengthening their genetics and kind of let the weaker ones die type of thing, they require a very clean environment because they can't handle the challenge to their immune system. So what winds up happening is that what winds up happening is that a lot of folks are concerned about being able to, like the idea of inbreeding, right? But what we try to do is, instead of bringing in outside genetics, because if you're bringing in an animal from another farm, even if they've had vaccines or whatever, and you try to go through all the due diligence from a medical standpoint, you can still be bringing other bugs into your operation through that animal that it's even possible that the owner who sold them to you doesn't know about. So you kind of have to, at some point, you try to close your herd and then you line breed where everything is going. Yeah, you're basically, exactly, you're trying to keep stuff out. Yeah, you want to try to avoid bugs coming in, and you want to consolidate good traits. And so you have to strategically select and breed and remove out things that are not going to build you a better pig. But with this mama, with baby Aggie, at some point I am going to try to get one of her purebred sons and then breed that back to her. And then once that litter comes out, that litter should have really excellent maternal qualities based on what she's given us. And to be fair, I bought the sire who is from a different genetic lineage, but that sire came from the same farm, who had excellent genetics and very good operating, the way they do stuff. Unfortunately, they closed. They're not selling breeders anymore. But I at least have a sow and a boar from there, and I'm going to try to take what I've got and recreate some of those genetics. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm actually going to breed that other boar that I got from that farm with my rock star sow, baby Aggie. I'm going to put them together. We'll get some purebreds. We'll see what those babies are like. Again, this is a process that's going to take like a year to get to the point where we can see what the product of that pairing, how kind of baby Aggie's daughters do with her granddaughters. And based on that, we can either keep a boar and then rebreed to her from one of her own, or if the boar that I currently have, his name is what the heck is his name? Ernest. Um, Ernie's the other boar from the farm. So Ernie might give us good enough maternal characteristics to where we keep his babies anyways. But if we want to distill things down, we could put Ernie and Aggie together. They have a boar, and then that boar breeds Aggie. And then we have like double whammy line breeding. If it works, it's line breeding. If it doesn't work, it's inbreeding. That's kind of the way people talk about it. The main thing, as I understand it, is that you don't want to breed laterally when you are breeding kind of within the family, so to speak, with pigs. I should put that out there. Just probably YouTube is absolutely just smashing the algorithm. And like I'm off in the corner, like I'm back in the back 40 on YouTube. Nobody is able to hear this. But yeah, like you want to be careful not to breed brothers and sisters, that kind of thing. But father, daughter, aunts, uncles, cousins, kind of, as long as there's a little bit of separation in the generations, technically better. Now, again, it doesn't always work. And I saw Bolino's Bounty asked, is there a standard you use when weighing the risks of taking in a new sow or boar onto your farm? Great question. And at this point, I haven't gotten to the point where I'm ready to close my herd, because you close your herd when you've gotten to the point of, okay, we've bred Ernie and Aggie and their babies are good, but then we took one of their boars and we rebred mama with that one, and now we're producing amazing meat quality and great maternal instincts, and it's like we're able to actually have a full barn full of good animals that are consistent. Then that's kind of the point at which I'm going to say, all right, let's close the herd, and we're not bringing in any new outside anything other than, because pretty much occasionally we need a new boar if Ernie gets too big or one of his sons gets too big. And what we would probably do is we use the gilts. The females are going to be, we're just going to keep the daughters out of the mom, because the mom is already, she's good to go. So we're going to keep her daughters out. And as mom ages out, baby Aggie goes to the happy freezer in the sky. The babies, her daughters, are going to replace her. And genetically, they have enough similarity to where you can keep breeding them, and you're going to get basically the same product. Really, the main thing that once you have it dialed in, occasionally you're going to bring in a new boar. You shouldn't have to once you get things squared away. And to be fair, I don't see this happening before like 2030 or so. But if I do everything fairly rigorously, I should be able to have things locked down, because in order to get the information that you need to be able to say, this is the right combination and we're going to remove everything else, it takes a number of different breeding cycles to get all of that accomplished and to really see that through. And then you can lock everything down. And then once you have it locked down, pretty much the only thing, if you want to bring in new genetics, the new genetics you bring in is you bring in a new boar and you maintain the herd genetics through all the female population. And then the changes that you want to see, you make those changes with the boar, because one boar creates change throughout all the different females, whereas one female is not gonna, the change that she produces is only going to be limited to the animals that she physically produces, obviously. And I mean, you can breed one of her resulting offspring, one of her boars, and then that's a different story, and you can keep back some of those, but pretty much as long as it works, you keep going. I am doing my herd. One of the reasons why for me the whole idea of a closed herd is a little bit different than maybe for some other farms is because I am not strictly a purebred Berkshire breeder. I have a purebred Berkshire herd, and I also have a purebred Tamworth herd. My short today was Pignacious, my big boar. He's a purebred Tam, which are really hard to find in this part of the country. And then I also have purebred Old Spots. And so the idea is I want to reach an equilibrium where I can close off each of those three herds, and then you have enough genetic diversity to cross to basically keep each purebred line going while crossing out with so you put the Tam and the Berk together and the resultant offspring, that's a F1 first generation hybrid. That animal is going to be growing like a house on fire. They're going to grow 10-15% faster than all their purebred cousins. They're also going to be hardier. Those are pretty much the production hogs that when you sell to somebody who has a small farm who's producing pork and they really want a good quality piglet that's going to be tough, that's going to grow fast, it's going to taste great, that's going to have all the qualities that they're investing in, and it's going to get off their feed bill in 6 months instead of 7.5 months, and it's going to have good quality carcass through and through. That's kind of what they're paying for, is one of those first generation hybrids, 2 different purebreds, different breeds that are crossed. And then any female that results as an F1 hybrid, you cross that with a separate, you cross that one with another third purebred, and that's what they call a 3-way cross. And that hybrid, or the result of the F1 being paired with a purebred of a different unrelated breed, everything coming from there is going to be the best that you're going to get. And then if you breed any of their offspring, the genetic punch that you have gained over those, genetic finaglings, all of that's going to be lost. Not lost, but it's going to be diminished. But that's like your apex of your genetic leverage happens with a 3-way cross. And so probably a smarter way to do that. I should probably do this. I'm an idiot. We got to have this realization all together. Probably the best way to do that would be to run a purebred herd of sows and really focus on getting that herd locked. And then you bring in 3 different boars to service them as needed. And there's kind of no reason to have, that's kind of the direction. Well, I like the Tamworths. Because that's part of the thing, is that I want to actually produce. You know what it comes down to is I can't make up my mind, because I love the Tams and I love the Berks. I love them. And the Old Spots, Sometimes I love them. Sometimes I'm kind of like, what am I doing with you guys? You guys are like fat and just obnoxious and you don't do anything right. And then there's other times when I'm just blown away at how good they do. They give me a beautiful litter. They're easy to manage. Like the babies are, you know. So and from a carcass quality standpoint, from a carcass quality standpoint, the old spots, they do bring a lot of marbling and fat to the table, which a lot of times when people are buying pork from a farm, they're buying it for the flavor, whereas like pork that you buy in the store, you're not buying it for the flavor of the pork, you're buying it for the flavor of the brown sugar and the various sauces that you are going to smother the pork with. In so that's kind of the objective there when you're buying pork from the store. But when you're buying it from the farm, the pork actually has flavor, and the flavor's all in the fat. And so you don't want to have too lean of a carcass where you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot and you're trading off your one of your more valuable assets, which is the fat from your pigs. And so the old spots enable you to get that marbling and get that fat. But when you're using and crossing with leaner breeds like Berks and Tams, and then you do the three-way with the old spot, you're able to, at least in theory, you're able to achieve a pretty significant, nice compromise between competing carcass characteristics that are difficult to achieve in any one purebred line. Plus, the hybrid vigor is going to make whatever you're achieving in that hybrid line, it's going to make it happen much faster, like 10 to 15% faster, which is a decent amount of money if you're feeding pigs. Like that's, a couple of weeks that you don't have to feed the pigs. Like you spread that across a couple of different animals that are off your feed bill off to market. Like that's, you know, it's handy. It makes a big difference. Plus, they are really, really tough. They're not as susceptible. All the pigs that I have had die here, so far, knock on wood, all of the pigs that I've ever had die on this farm have all been purebred. I have never had a cross animal die. I've never had any. I've never had any of my crosses die, unless they were obviously the ones that were going in the freezer, they did. But of like sickness or some kind of malady that just happened to hit them out of the middle of nowhere, you know. Girly Girl 82, I'd love to talk about line breeding. Yeah, we've kind of been on that for a little bit. If you have additional questions about the line breeding, I am happy to entertain those, kick those around. If you want to try calling in again, I saw you up there a little bit ago. Happy to give it another try. I think that, you said it sounds like doodle breeding. I think it's fairly similar to the way that, like, breeding in general, I think is kind of a, one, I don't want to say one size fits all, but it's kind of there's a lot of overlap regardless of the species of what we're doing. Okay, let me hop on here and see if she can hear me. And let's give this a go. All right, I see a puppy, and I can hear you. Can you hear me? Are you hearing me on your end? No, must not be. Must not be hearing me. Interesting. Well, let me see. Let me try something here. Oh, you know what it might be? Oh, hell. I know what it is. Okay, how's that? Do you hear me now? Oh, no, where'd you go? Let's try this. I think I... All right. We're so close. There's the one thing that I didn't do. Um, of course, there was the one thing that I was supposed to click, and I did not. If you're able to get back in there again, or somebody else wants to jump in there, we can actually. I think we've been so close. I don't want to abandon this effort now. All right, coming back. Just kidding, not yet. Um, I don't know what that is. We'll just pop that out there for now, and we'll come back to that. Yeah, try and call in again. I apologize because I was the one who did not have. There's a setting that I had to enable on my end that I did not, and I was like, why can't you hear me? But it was through the hosting site. There's too many moving pieces. I understand now why they have producers and people that do all of this stuff. And I'm sitting here on my thumb trying to pretend like a competent, media personality and trying to keep my face from like swallowing the camera and going through all of this stuff. But we're this close. I promise I connected the right thing so that now if you call back in, you should be able to hear me and we should be in business. And if anybody else wants to call in and wants to try out the link in the description, you can also do that. Although, to be fair, Girly Girl 1982 has been the most persistent and has put in a decent amount of time. So I feel like there's some right of first refusal there. This could be the historic moment where we have the first like two-way transmission on a Rowan Ridge Farm live stream. Yeah, yes, so you don't need to have the live stream playing. When you go to the call, it's not gonna your YouTube goes bye-bye. What we're doing is when you call, it's gonna be you and me talking like we're on FaceTime video. All right. So if try going back to the link in there, opening, share the camera, and you should be able to hear me this time because I fixed one of the settings on my end. I completely goofed that up. I apologize, but you should be able to see and hear me, and then we can go from there. But you don't need to. One of the things I didn't realize last time was that I was trying to do it with like the video call and the YouTube, and like YouTube has to close in order for the video call to work. Just like I don't think you can watch FaceTime, do a FaceTime while you're watching YouTube on the phone at the same time. There's not enough bandwidth for that. So that's the way. And I think I really hope I'm not over promising here, but I think we got everything situated so that it should work. And yeah, guys, make sure you like and subscribe. And anybody want to become, we haven't had any members in here tonight. We have 7 members on the channel whose contributions make a lot of this stuff possible. And I will tell you that the light that is illuminating my face here is a gift from one of the channel members, Mr. John Lightfoot. And I don't know if that's doxing, but I mean it as a compliment, so hopefully not. Yeah, thank you, Josh. The devolution of the streams peak. Isaac, hey, how are you? When you have piglets born, how do you give them the proper attention and care while working full time? I had 3 pharaohs in a month, and it was a bit much. Yeah, I mean, there's no way around that reality. The farrowing, it is a lot, and I rely on my mamas to give them the care that they need. So I guess maybe be a little more specific if you can in terms of like what care we're talking about. one thing I can tell you is that anytime, like, the feeding is always like a separate ball of wax, because you're not feeding the mom with the babies in with the same with everybody else. So you kind of have to separate them out. But once that part is attended to, more or less, and what I've been doing on the pasture is I just put the dish for mama on the other side of the pasture. Everybody else, I put the constellation of dishes that everybody else eats out of, I put them on the other side. And that way, like, she kind of has her own area while everybody else is occupied. And so she's able to get a decent amount. I'm going to try to separate some of the other folks out from her as well. But yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot of work. One of the things, though, that I like to do when I can is if I can group farrow them. So I guess group farrow might not quite be a precise way to put it. Like group, like a maternity ward, basically, where if you have one mama that has 5, another mama has 10, another mama has like 8 or 9, once the farrowing has been completed and the babies are all out, because they don't necessarily do super well being all in, on top of each other at the same time when that's happening. But once the babies are out, then pretty much they can be in together, and then they'll share in the feeding together, they'll share in the nursing together. And like, that's kind of what I've been doing with my 2 sows that I have in the barn. They're kind of in their cohabitating. They each have 9 babies, and the babies kind of, there's like maybe 4 or 5 days in between each one of the litters. So the one sow, her babies are a little smaller, the other ones are a little bigger. But they are, trying to batch stuff as much as possible. That's been the way that I have done that. Isaac says, I want to do that, like a big farrowing pen with each sow having their own corner. Yeah, it works, because when they're in that same mode of kind of doing things, it seems to be good. All right, let me hop in here. Are you able to hear me now? Anything? Oh, where'd you go? Can you hear me? Can you see me? What do we have going on here? And of course, all this stuff is behind the camera, so I have to like duck out of the way to see it. All right, we should be going here. Are you hearing me? Seeing anything? All right. Well, I think we're gonna take the call off there for now. Isaac asks, how has your pricing been this season for feeder piglets? So I have kept my price for feeder piglets at $150 this season. Well, at least into the spring. At this point, I have increased my prices kind of for the summer and moving forward to $175 for feeders, which I realize it's a lot. There's no question about that, but at the same time, it's it's just the cost of doing business. But yeah, I've been, I haven't gotten any complaints about it. Everybody that I've talked to has tried to give me a deposit even after they hear the price. So I assume that must not be too far out of the, kind of the accepted price range here in New England. Let's see. Oh, I got the call back. All right. Are you able to hear me? Huh. Nope. Guess not. Isaac says, I do organic and I don't want to do 175, but it's a necessity. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you gotta sell them for what it costs you to do it, because pretty much everybody else, everybody else is gonna have to get there as well. But I mean, 150 is not bad. Isaac, where are you based out of? Because that may also have something, that has something to do with the prices. Because regionally, it's a little bit different. You know, I wouldn't necessarily recommend selling for, um, 175 if you're in South Carolina or Ohio or Pennsylvania, but in New England, yeah, that's what it is. So, you know, I I don't think there's anything, especially when the market is what it is. Like, you got to think, if somebody's buying 2 or 3 piglets, if you can afford 150 for your piglets. Oh, Schoharie County. Okay, yeah, that's upstate New York, beautiful area there. Um, yeah, I mean, if you can afford 150, you can afford 175 is the way I look at it. And on scale, to me, that makes a big difference between whether I'm going to be able to sell my piglets and buy feed at the end of the month with that, or if I'm going to sell all my piglets and then not have enough money left over to buy feed. Because for me, that $25 is a repeating quantity that is going to stack or not, as the case may be. So yeah, definitely, I'm not an advocate for price gouging by any stretch, but I also think that most of us that are doing this, the natural course of the way things go, most of us are typically going to want to be a little more conservative with our pricing, and we're going to generally err on the side of being a little bit too cheap rather than on the side of being a little bit too um, too expensive. And so I think that most of the time, most of us probably have a lot more room to raise our prices than what we think, if we're being realistic about it. Because we, we always feel like it's, gee shucks, and handshake and a smile, and I knew your gramps down at the VFW or whatever. And the reality is, like, this is a business, and if we're not making money, then we're not selling any piglets. Like, I may be able to sell you piglets for $1.50 and keep that price, or hell, even $1.25. But if I'm selling at $1.25, I'm losing money, and I'm not going to be selling next year anything, because I'm not going to have any piglets left, because that's just, I'm not going to be able to buy feed, because the cost of everything is expensive. So that all has to be factored in, and it has to be addressed, I guess you could say. So yeah, it's a it's a very real thing, and that's something that I've had to tell. Let's see. Well, don't mind me. I'm just taking a little insulin here. So that's a good question. Isaac asks, why would they pay 175 a pop when they can pay 100 or 125 from a random homestead or hobby farm? I know my pigs are higher quality, but a lot of people think that doesn't matter, and they just go with whatever. Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, and some of this is regionally specific. So the answer, as unsatisfying as it may be, that I have for you is, it depends. In this area, there's a lot of people that sell homesteader, kind of what you're describing, kind of a piglets that are not necessarily bad quality, but people that are breeding pigs from a standpoint of, I have a male, I have a female, eventually there's little ones, now we have piglets, they're great, without any thought about genetic selection, genetic quality, breeds, traits, any of that stuff. There's no like work being done in the breeding. And the people that want to try to talk me down, those people aren't my customers. I have no, I mean, generally speaking, the price tag lets them know that. Now, for people who are interested in raising their animals for a, and they're trying to make money on pork, it matters to them that they have a good quality to input into their production line. And they know that if they're getting stronger genetics that are going to be healthier, that are going to grow faster, they're going to have better carcass quality, they understand that that's why they're paying a little extra. It's for the quality that they are getting that comes with actual selective breeding and the work of breeding that other kind of the homesteader pigs that you're talking about, they don't have. Some of it is also the size of and the scale that you're selling to. Like, I have downsized a lot of my clientele so that I don't really sell much to smaller homesteaders and farmers. I sell more to like homesteader, like businesses, I guess you could say. Now, some of them are smaller businesses and they are, um, where they're buying like 5 to 10, 6, 7, 8, piglets at a clip. But typically, if I'm selling 2 or 3 at a time, it's usually it's an exception that I'm making, because the more I have been doing this and the more I've been putting into marketing and kind of reaching out, and the word travels and spreads and people want good quality animals. And as that happens, they start to, figure it out. And as that's happened, I've gotten a lot more demand from bigger not homesteads, bigger small farm or small pork producers that want good quality heritage pork that's grown outdoors on pasture, all the ethical and niceties. But they want that, but they want it at a larger scale where they want to buy 20, 30, 40, 50 piglets at a time, a couple of times a year. And ultimately, what I am trying to get to is to get my sow herd producing consistently enough and my system dialed enough year round to where I can be doing 2 to 3 groups of piglets every year that are like consistently, that are like 50 to 100 twice a year. And then, as needed in between, but some of that I can sell and eat myself. Some of the other litters that come and go in between. But as long as I can do the majority of my sales to larger producers, and again, when I say larger, I mean larger within the local food economy, larger, not like Smithfield larger, because we're talking vastly larger numbers than anything I would ever be able to or want to produce. But you know, um, instead of the 1, 2, 3 piglets here and there, we're talking like 10, 15, 20, etc. Those are the ones that I'm trying to focus on. I know the other places aren't using quality feed, and just with whatever they can get their hands on that cheap. So then the real question is, where do you find the right customers who appreciate the quality you provide? Is that something that builds over time, or is there something specific you do? Great question. The topic of marketing when it comes to small farming is a really important one, and it's something that most small farmers completely overlook, because I don't know if you guys saw the interview that I did with my friend Don, and I very possibly a lot of you guys here. You know, there's people who watch YouTube that are like, "Oh, I hate technology. I don't know how to use that stuff. I don't do any of that. Hashtag nonsense. I just kind of go in there and I know what I'm doing with the animals, but I don't really have to worry about the computery stuff because that greasy kid stuff ain't for me." Fair enough. I get that. However, the way that the markets move and the way that people discover things and buy things nowadays, it matters. So one of the biggest things that I think that helped me, I had a website. I put a website up with email capture on it. So Squarespace for the website. I am not sponsored, unfortunately, by Squarespace or MailChimp, which is the email service that I use. And you basically get your site set up with some decent photography, which can all be done these days on a smartphone, the photography part of things. But if you're not like, spend a little money and get a good photographer to come in and get some good pictures of your farm so that you can make quality marketing materials. Because when you're trying to sell piglets, I can't tell you how many people I have outsold in terms of piglets, because of the fact that when they take their pictures, they're standing up and it's like looking down on the animals, like the most unappealing angles. They got their finger in the over the lens in the photo, and it's kind of crooked, and the animals it looks like a PETA poster, and it's very, very unappealing. And so a little bit of effort with aesthetics goes a long way. Some of it is also time, but getting a website up there sooner than later, so that, and I like Squarespace because it's very plug and play. You don't have to do code and like really understand the nuts and bolts behind the scenes, cloak and dagger stuff. You just kind of get some good quality pictures, get a rough idea of, and it takes some time. It takes some time. If you're not paying somebody to do it, it's going to take some time to get that laid out. But when you get a website put together, that enables search engine optimization to crawl your website and get it ranked in Google. And that happens while you're sleeping, while you're selling piglets, while you're losing litters, while you're haggling with buyers that you don't like. It's crawling your site and making sure that you're moving up in the rankings, so that now when people are looking for pork in New England, in their area, like I get emails just about every day from people who are looking either for piglets or for pork, for roasters. A lot of people looking for roasters recently. I have no roasters because all of my pigs, I don't have enough pigs, but I got people looking. And so there's, people will search, even like I get people from Massachusetts and Connecticut that are looking. I've had a couple people from New York, not many. But the point is, if you have a website that is hosted by a reputable service provider with a easy to remember URL, that's another thing. Like, my farm's name is Rowan Ridge Farm. Great. It's a cool name. It means something to me, but I don't want to have that as my website, as my URL, because I want that to be something that's like more aligned with the search term. So my website is nhpork.com, newhampshirepork.com. And what I did is I went in there when I set up my website and I bought domain names. So I bought New Hampshire Pork. I bought New Hampshire Pasture Pigs. I bought, like, at the time I was butchering, so I bought New Hampshire Custom Butchering, etc. I bought a whole bunch of different domains. And then based on some of the things, as I downsized the butchering, I got rid of that. And I got rid of some of the other ones that I was just like, okay, this is enough. So now I have newhampshirepork.com and nhpork.com. New Hampshire Pork redirects to nhpork.com, but it's very simple, very short, very easy to remember. It'll stick in somebody's head. I'm from New Hampshire. I raise pigs. NH Pork. That's it. And so you have those. Those are, but the website makes it indexable to Google. And then YouTube is also useful because it's owned by Google. And so it's the world's second largest search engine. And so what happens is, even when somebody goes on ChatGPT, now I have had people come to me and I ask them because I always ask people, like when I get an email from somebody out of the clear blue sky who's like, oh, do you have piglets? Because I don't post anything on Craigslist, anything, almost nothing on Facebook. Sometimes I post classes, like when we're teaching classes here, I'll post that on Facebook. Otherwise, I stay out of it because I don't want to be in there throwing elbows with everybody that's got like a couple of piglets and all that jazz. I generally try to stay out of that and I don't mean this to sound like an elitist jerk, but like, what I'm doing, I want to be very focused on what I'm doing and not lower myself and try to compete for business that I don't actually want, because I want to sell a higher quality product to a higher quality producer. And some of that requires you, I mean, if you think about the difference between, a the way a Mercedes-Benz is marketed versus the way a Ford Taurus, back when they used to have those, I guess Ford doesn't make those anymore, I've heard, the way that those are marketed, it's like they're two very different things. And they serve a different audience, a different customer base, etc. So I think there's nothing wrong with kind of differentiating and knowing who you're trying to sell to and knowing how you want to do business. Because if I only had, if I were, just had a couple of pigs and it's like I got a couple here and there. And there's sometimes when I think about doing this, it's like, man, it would be nice to just kind of get rid of all the pigs. And it's like I have piglets every now and then. I got 2 or 3, and I have a litter. Okay, once a year I have a litter of pigs. Twice a year maybe I'll find somebody on Facebook who wants a couple of piglets and call it a day. But what I'm trying to do at this point, it's a higher level thing. So I don't get in the mud and throw elbows with everybody on Facebook. Because part of the thing that people don't realize is, like, you're fishing in the most crowded hole in the river when you go on a Facebook group and you're like, buy my piglets in the New Hampshire Farm Life. That's the one group that I always come back to, although I'm sure there's other different groups in different states that are like this, or forums or whatever. It's like you're kind of preaching to the choir. Everybody who's in there is a homesteader, and they all think that they're talking to normal people out there in the world, and they're not, because normal people out there in the world who are under 60 aren't even on Facebook. And those people are just asking ChatGPT, hey, where can I find a pig for pig roast in New Hampshire? And ChatGPT is going to say, let me check Google. Oh, Google gave me X, Y, and Z websites. And it's going to rank them and give them to people and say, oh, here's where we think you should go. And I've had people that have found me because of basically ChatGPT referencing my ranking in Google because of my website. But the importance of having a good quality website with good quality branding, a memorable URL. In other words, and there's a lot that could be said about branding, and you could get overly into the weeds. I guess my point is, I'll land the plane here, is that there's the marketing matters. It's not something to be, there's plenty of farmers out there who scoff at my business model and my farm because I'm new at this. Granted, this is year 5 now. And by year 2 and 3, I was outselling them by a wide margin. And hey, they can laugh all they want, but like, I have a means of reaching customers where they come to me. I don't go looking for them. And that's one of the reasons why I have expanded what I'm doing here, is because of the fact that I have more customers than I have animals available. When the balance starts to swing back the other way, I'm going to start cutting my herd back, and that's going to be that, because I don't, I'm not growing my herd in order to stroke my own ego. I'm growing my herd because I want to see where the ceiling is on this thing. And there's actually a underserved market of pork producers that are raising local high quality pork, but that aren't going to fill their demand that they need to produce what they're doing, with just like the 3 or 4 here and there from different homesteads, and the one overfeeds them, and so this one is really fatty, and the other one they couldn't afford feed, and they ran out halfway through the season, and now this one is just like like a walking skeleton. And then you try to sell that to people, and it's like, oh, it came organic, fresh from a farm, yada yada, and people are like, this doesn't match up, right? Like, you want to have continuity, you have a good looking product that's uniform. And those pork producers are underserved. And so I'm in like a weird little in between area where I'm able to serve them. And honestly, I didn't find it because I'm a business magnate or a genius, and I am still riding a very, very fine line. And I got punished hard this winter, losing all the piglets that I did. And I am like, I have no financial cushion. It's like every piglet that gets sold, every dollar is going right into the grain bin. And then we got to get another litter out. And then eventually, hopefully by next year, we'll be back to a little bit of liquidity. But right now we are just tighter than skin on a hot dog, pun intended. And it's so there's still a lot of pros and cons to all of this. But yeah, the marketing, you got to take the marketing really seriously. And yeah, I think content is a big part of it. I see you said that you've been using and posting videos of piglets. That helps build followers on the farm page on Facebook. I think that like this is just my personal. This is my personal whatever. I hate Facebook. I have a Facebook page, and I do check my messages when I see somebody message the farm page. But for the most part, Facebook is kind of a dead enterprise. Like, if you think about what you get on Facebook, is you get people that want to argue and haggle. Look at what people do on Facebook. It's like kind of a big trailer park where people get together and like throw beer bottles across the driveway at each other through each other's windows. I mean, that's the vibe on Facebook. And the only way I would want to use Facebook is if occasionally, if I can get somebody off of Facebook to go to my website. Because when somebody comes to your website, that's a place that's like, oh, this is nice. I didn't realize this place was here in this part of town. Like it feels good. We got a good atmosphere, etc. And so really Facebook for me is only a redirect to either communicate directly with people who are looking for me or who are going to my website, and Facebook is a signpost for me to just be like, this is where you can find out about what we're doing. Come see my website and let's have a conversation there. And then when you send me an email, then it's a very different type of person that goes from A to B to C. And once we get to the point of emailing, we're already more or less on the same sheet of music and they understand what we're dealing with. And the people that don't come to my website, great. Like there's other sellers out there that'll, do a great job for you. And I wish you all the best, but I'm not the one for you. And so I think that really from a marketing strategy, I don't like Facebook. I don't like TikTok. I don't like Instagram. All of those like little tidbit, short attention, brain rot editing type of crap. Like it's too busy. There's too much nonsense. YouTube, I think, is a uniquely useful platform, which is the reason why like I don't put any effort into any other platforms whatsoever. Like close to zero. Because YouTube actually allows me to build a body of work and credible information that I can link to my website and that I can use. And the importance of the website, this is something I cannot overstate. Whatever you're doing on Facebook or any other social media platform, the reason it needs to go back to a website is because a website leads to your email list, and your email list is yours. Your Facebook page is Mark Zuckerberg's. So anytime that he decides, oh, pig farts are the new problem, it's the cow farts, that's old hat, but now it's the pig farts, your page, gotta go, buddy. He can do that because that's his page. It's not yours. He's lending you space on his section of the internet, but your email list, that belongs to you. And so I always am redirecting people who are interested. Everything, the hub of the wheel is always the website from a sales perspective and a marketing and informational perspective. It all goes back to the website and the email list. And you build an email list, even if you've never sent an email, like a mass marketing email campaign, just collect emails. Because at some point you're going to be like, okay, I'm ready. I have this big announcement and I want all these people to know, because these are all people, we got maybe 50 people who sign up for our email updates. Nobody's going to get mad at you for not emailing them and be like, oh, geez, I signed up for this guy's email list and he hasn't sent me a newsletter to welcome me. What a jerk. I'm unsubscribing. See ya. Nobody's ever going to do that. Like if they give you their email, you're under no obligation to email them for any purpose until you're ready. But when you're ready, you have it. And then when you have something that you want to announce, you want to push something, hey, this is a new exciting product, a new thing that we're pushing, a special that we have, help that we need, then you put that email list together and blast out an email, and it's going in a more direct personal form of communication where you can reach people who are actually going to see it and interact with it. Whereas on Facebook, you know, um, and Isaac says, I can relate my profession as a carpenter. You learn there are some people you'd rather not have as a customer. Yes, I have definitely heard that, and prefer people who would appreciate the quality you provide. 100%. 100%. Bellino's Bounty says, I agree with you. I would not like to use Facebook when it's time for me to start selling. That said, I'm 3 to 5 years from that bridge. Isaac says, okay, I guess I'm going to build a website. You're right. Facebook is, yeah, they're hagglers. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with using Facebook and just to be there so that if, let's say, your elderly neighbor who lives and breathes Facebook because they have to go and argue about politics on Facebook naturally, which is apparently what everybody does there. Well, you can have a Facebook page, and eventually, you know, like if they're really interested and they want to connect with me on Facebook, I have a Facebook page. I think I have an Instagram and a TikTok. I literally have not logged into either of them in over a year, and I'm okay with that. I mean, TikTok, it feels like it was going someplace at one point, and it was very tempting to start doing these like little, you know, casual reels and crap, but it's just like, it's just too much. It's too much. And so I want to focus on building relationships that are going to be productive. YouTube is a place where those of you that are like, we're having this conversation, I know a handful of you. I mean, to be fair, I know a handful of you like in person. I know a handful of you, although I don't know if Josh is still here. Josh, are you still here? But a handful of you I have met through YouTube. And if I needed something, I could say, hey, could you come over and help me with this? Or like, I need some help with this. You would be able to help me. And I know I could count on some of you folks to do that. And so those are the kind of relationships that I want to build where there's less inertia, less friction, and you always got to have the hub of the wheel. Where do you want to send people? Send them to your website. And then the YouTube channel is another good place because, again, if somebody searches up Stephen Reichert or they search up pigs in New Hampshire, they're going to find my YouTube, and then they can like listen to one of my videos, and either they're going to be like, wow, what a pretentious a-hole, look at his stupid white glasses, what a jerk, and then we don't have to bother having a conversation, or they're going to be like, oh, okay, this guy seems like he is reasonable, like let me go see what he's got, you know. But you're kind of eliminating a lot of the legwork. But the big thing is that with a platform like YouTube and a platform and a website with a search engine optimization, which ultimately reaches as far as like, you know, AI, chat GPT, etc. And a lot of people, I do this anyways, a lot, like if I have a question, I'll ask chat GPT and I'll look for links that they give me, but I want them to kind of synthesize things into like the top 2 or 3 links because I don't want to have to go scrolling and find a whole bunch of different links. Just give me the top 3 links that you have that answer this question and I'll pick one of them. And you can even just distill the information and give that to me. But in terms of local businesses or products, services, like I've found businesses locally through ChatGPT and people have found me there, but that all happens because I'm ranked on Google, because I've spent time on Google, because I have a website with search engine optimization. And one of the things with Facebook and all of these platforms, I mean, to an extent, YouTube as well, although it's a different setup on YouTube. So I wouldn't expect to drive traffic to my website from YouTube, but like Facebook is a place where it's kind of more like a bulletin board rather than a hangout place. YouTube, there's a little more hanging out. It's a little more ongoing, but Facebook is a place that's kind of like a bulletin board. I would, you know, you post your website up there and Facebook is automatically going to just crush it with the algorithm because they don't want people to see my link to my website. They also don't want people to see my link to my YouTube channel. And I take I take personal offense. Part of the reason why I don't really use Facebook, because the main thing that offers me an avenue to grow, if you sit here and you're hanging out for a live stream, if you watch one of my videos all the way through, if you like, comment, and subscribe on my videos, please do that if you haven't already. Like, you are helping me and actually building the money that I can make to keep doing this. On Facebook, there's no such function. I mean, there is somewhat, but it's different. But yeah, Facebook doesn't want to send people to your website. So that's kind of my rant against Facebook. Isaac asks, have I done any marketing with flyers and ads? How do you drive traffic to your website? So flyers and ads, no, I have not. I don't mean this to sound pedantic, but I haven't needed to. I have more people contacting me than I know what to do with. So I'm not looking for any more business. And I think it might be worth a try, but at the end of the day, I'm looking for like minimal effort. One of the things, and to answer your next question about how I drive website traffic, is using a service like Squarespace. There are other reputable web hosting sites that'll do this. Squarespace has search engine optimization built in. And I'm not going to go down a whole rabbit hole because I'm not an expert on SEO. But what I can tell you is, like, when you upload a photo, if you change the file name to searchable terms, like pigs on the pasture in New York, right? And you put those, they call it alt text. So when you're uploading a photo to go as like your banner, you put the alt text in there and you type a short sentence or sentence fragment that describes what the picture is. That creates more, it's like Velcro. You know, you have all these little strands that the other piece can grab onto, because Google is crawling websites all the time, because Google is always looking to say, hey, what are you doing out here? What's this? What's that? And they're trying to put it into the picture of what the internet is. And then that gets returned and indexed. And the more, like, the better your website is, and the more thoroughly you set it up so that it has pictures with alt text, and you go through all of the SEO functions and you help build that out. So, and this stuff is not that robust. It's not brain surgery. I would recommend take a little time, do some YouTube research from people who are much better at this and smarter than I am, and it will help you figure out the big things that you can do that'll help your website rank higher in Google. As it ranks higher in Google, it's going to drive traffic there, based on like people saying, hey, where can I get a roast pig? Where can I buy piglets? Where can I buy this, that, or the other thing? 99% of everybody that I'm doing any kind of business with at this point, it comes from there. And then YouTube is the other thing, because YouTube is owned by Google. It is the second largest search engine in the world. And so if somebody types in, I want a piglet in New Hampshire, my channel will come up. And if they watch the channel and they're like, yeah, I want to buy one of that guy's piglets. Oh, he's in New Hampshire. Hey, honey, he's only, an hour down the road from us. Maybe we could get one of his piglets. Then they're going to go looking through my information. They see, oh, there's my website, and they'll go there. And then, like I said, ChatGPT will also index your website if it ranks in search queries and search results. So, and my point is that I did not do anything special. I did not go out there and like put a bunch of money into SEO, search engine optimization. I did not go out there and put a lot of time into it. I used to be a photographer, so I know a thing or two about taking photos, good looking photography, and the aesthetic that works. But honestly, it's worth putting, a couple $1,000 into it, in the same way that, like, if you're going to build a storefront, if you build a nice website, you can either take your own time and learn how to do it, because it's fairly user friendly if you're even remotely comfortable using computers, or, just pay somebody else to do it, and somebody that you can trust and that you can supervise and that will take your feedback seriously, but put some emphasis on getting a good website that is connected to an email service like MailChimp. And that will allow you to, number one, get Google indexing your website, even if you're still a year or two away from selling stuff. Your website is still starting to rank. And then by the time you have a product to sell, you're going to be ranked higher. And then it's going to be, which is what happened to me. I got the website up before I was even having piglets. And then by the time I was having piglets, it had been about a year and the website had gotten indexed and was doing well on Google. And so I started having people reaching out to me, and it's like, it's a snowball. It kind of happens gradually. Yeah, I hear you. It is important, but at the same time, also keep in mind that word of mouth counts for a lot. And, farmers markets might be a good place if you're looking for in-person stuff. Go to some farmers markets, talk to people, and, some of the guys that are moving a lot of pork, talk to them and ask them like where you're getting your pigs. See if you can. And one of the things that happens, because unfortunately, like, this cuts both ways, but as a breeder who has just had a really lousy spring, and I am licking my wounds, but I can tell you that a lot of the people that I had to turn down, my dogs are barking like idiots. The people that I had to turn down, they're not coming back. The people that I normally serve, they've been coming to me for X amount of years. And I said, this year, oh, sorry, man, I don't have them. I don't have them in time. You had to wait. You have to do this, the inconvenience. And I understand it's nothing personal. It's like you get used to doing things. And then when that stride is broken because there's a hang up, it's real hard to go back. And so pork producers are always looking for somebody to supply them with piglets. There's a lot of people who are out there who are looking, and and that's the other thing too, is like, if you build on your website, like, write text descriptions where you talk about, hey, this is like almost like a little blog article where you're advertising, because that's what your website is. You're advertising, this is what we do and how. So that, number one, Google is going to index that. But if somebody is looking for piglets in upstate New York, they're going to see your website and it'll give them a preview of this text that says, hey, we sell X amount of type of piglets to these types of producers, and we want to help you do business. And like, you're pitching to them, look, you want to sell great quality pork. It starts with great quality piglets that are going to be hardier, healthier, and that are going to grow faster than the pink piglets that, may or may not have all kinds of problems. You don't know where they've come from. You come to my farm, you can meet the grandparents of the animals that you're going to be taking home, and you're going to have a better experience as a result. And, you're selling the sizzle. You're not selling the steak, it's the sizzle. And you can still certainly do that. And the thing is, for a website, let me tell you this, you don't necessarily even have to build out a full website. You can just do a one-page website that has like an email thing that says, hey, we're working, this is a picture of our farm, a little about blurb, and with an email capture form in there. If you go to my website, nhpork.com, you can see how I have mine set up. It's very easy to change, and I change things and tune it up all the time. But you can just set up a single page where you're not having to worry about people clicking in, clicking out, this page, and this goes to that one, and that goes to, the knee bone connected to the hip bone and all the rest of that stuff. It's just you can make a one page, you can make a one page just to capture email and get it built. And then you can always come back to it. You don't have to have the full iteration of it built out all in one shot. But as long as you have a page there with the email list Because again, the people who are interested, who like the cut of your jib, the other thing you can do, if you have a YouTube channel, put in like a video, like this is our latest YouTube video, put that in on the one page, and then people can watch a video that says this is a tour of our farm, let's say, and a little blurb in text at the top that says, I'm Isaac, and we started this farm in Schoharie County in upstate New York because we believe in this, that, and the other thing, and we raise our animals this way. You have a couple of nice pictures. Email, we will let you know when we have piglets available, pork, etc. You know, you can do a couple of different things with that. And I'm not trying to over micromanage your marketing, but like you can look at mine for an example. Mine is not great, but it's good enough where you kind of give people, and then like the nice thing about Squarespace is the fact that like you can toggle the view from being computer view to mobile phone view, because a lot of times if you're just looking at it on a computer, it's like, oh, that looks good to me. And you got all this text that you can read because you're sitting at a computer screen, and then somebody goes there with a phone and they're like, you know, they can't see anything because it's tiny. So the more you make it like a one-page thing that's right to the point, but it has your URL that is ideally shortish and punchy and memorable. It's better if it's like not cool, but it's a little weird, so it's memorable. And yeah, I'm not going to go down the roads of like trying to give suggestions on exactly how to do that, but you could play with it a little bit, workshop some ideas, but something that's memorable, that captures the essence of what you're doing, the name of your farm. And again, your URL doesn't have to be the name of your farm. Like I am not rowanridgefarm.com, because that's impossible to give that to everybody. Good night, Mike. Have a good night, man. You know, thanks for hanging out with us, and I appreciate your patience through the stream. I look forward to seeing more of your shorts, guys. Follow Mike if you haven't done that. Bellino's Bounty. He has been crushing it with his shorts as he and his fiance Anna are building out a piece of more or less raw property that's about 20 minutes away from me. They're going to be our kind of neighbors, and yeah, they do some cool stuff. Mike's got a very good presence on camera. I enjoy watching his stuff. I've been selling feeders to locals through Facebook, and a good amount said they would come back next year. Not sure if they're just talking, but if I get enough yearly customers, it would be easier. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the yearly customers, a lot of times they'll be your yearly customers until you can't provide them with pigs, and then they'll never come back. And that's okay. But if you get bigger customers who are going to work with you and they kind of count on you and you count on them, then that's a little bit of a different story, and that can happen. I'm not saying that there's no good that can come from Facebook by any stretch, and I've definitely encountered and met and sold piglets to some good people out there, but ultimately you want your focus to be on getting to a point where you don't have to do marketing, where you can put your time and attention into growing pigs, not selling pigs, because the pigs should sell themselves more or less. Like with a website and an email list set up, everything kind of sells itself. And that's kind of the way that should ideally, right? That's the way that it should go. I mean, here and there, like for example, if I have a breeding boar, I'll put them on Facebook and tell people, hey, if you're looking for a breeder. And I have the same guy that messages me every time I try to sell a boar, and he tries to offer me half of what the animal's worth. I'm like, dude, I'm not giving you a papered animal that's a proven producer for like $500. Like, I'm sorry. But if that were the going rate for a proven boar, who's got papers, good lineage, makes good babies, you know, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So anyhow. Yep. So on that note, folks, it has gotten to the point where I am about ready to hit the hay for this evening as well. I have enjoyed this conversation. We kind of covered some of the bases, and this has been interesting. I am going to leave this stream up and available as a full live stream. I'm also going to cut the file up into a few different smaller shorts to kind of follow the topical drift that we had tonight, so we can get a couple of different videos out of this. But folks, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you guys. I'm going to keep pushing out the shorts and seeing what we can do there. And I appreciate you guys being patient. Hopefully we'll get the streaming figured out. We'll be back to 4K next week. If anybody's watching on a TV, I apologize that you have to see all the digital artifacts associated with, streaming in 1080. But here we are. So yeah, I really appreciate all you guys. Also, just as we're signing off, I should have done this first before signing off, but we have memberships open, and for a couple bucks a month to $9 and change a month, you guys can become members, support what we're doing, help us get the word out, make America farmers again. You can be part of helping the other 7 people that are putting their oar in the water to help us make that progress. And either way, we look forward to seeing you guys on the next stream. No stream next week, but the week after, because we're going, I think, next week, the week after. Is next week July 4th? So it might not be the week after, because I might be on vacation that week. Although I'll post shorts. We'll be in touch. I'll be around. All right, guys. We will see you.